call this meeting to order. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please stay standing. We have an invocation by Charlie Huston.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you really for who you are and all the blessings that you pour out upon us, Father. And we just pray that you be with us as we gather here this evening. Guide us and direct us as we make decisions that affect this community. And above all, Father, help us to remain centered in your will. We love you and we praise you, for it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Denham. Here. Skanes.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Fenton.
Here.
Whitus.
Here.
C.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Alderman Whitus, will you please present Tammy Jones of the Police Department as the Employee of the Month for June 2021?
Tammy, come on down. So it is my privilege to announce that the City of Branson Service and Excellence Employee of the Month Award for June 2021 is going to Tammy Jones, the Branson Police Department's Property and Evidence Manager. This award is to recognize employees who have gone above and beyond and whose performance exemplifies the City of Branson values. Tammy has recently completed a multi-year goal of reaching a 1-to-1 intake-output ratio in her evidence storage facilities. Police departments across the nation are jealous of this because this is very rare, and she has done it in a small amount of time. This is a lot of work. She is well deserving of this award. This is the first for the Branson Police Evidence Unit. Many evidence rooms and organizations never achieve this level of efficiency. This demonstrates Tammy's dedication and willingness to do what it takes to reach her goals. This commitment has consumed hundreds of hours of her time while only being a small part of her overall responsibilities. Yes, she does do other things. Demonstrating her stewardship, excellence, and dedication to sustainability. On behalf of the Mayor, Board of Aldermen, City Administrator, and City staff, it is my honor to announce Tammy Jones, City of Branson's June 2021 Service and Excellence Employee of the Month. Congratulations, and keep up the good work.
Jamie, what do I got to do
Congratulations.
to qualify for something like that? I like that flag.
Congratulations, Tammy. This time is the public comment section of our Board of Aldermen meeting. We'll hear citizens who have signed up in order they are listed. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Our first speaker is Joe Brickey, speaking on the approval and annexation lot 35 Country Bluff Estates.
Joe Brickey, 291 Garner Drive, Country Bluff Estates here in Branson. She's going to hand out some letters there. So I've got the letter that it's being passed out, but I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't think I'm going to last my 4 minutes. So thanks for letting me speak tonight. I appreciate it. We had a community meeting a couple weeks ago, and I wasn't able to attend. And my wife, Sarita, was here, and I know she talked a little bit, but so I'd like to share some thoughts. The first thing I want to say is I'm not a friend of Dan Ruda, as opposed to a lot of people who believe that. I've been the president of Country Bluff for over a year, and I've been fighting hard to try to bring some resolution to the conflict but it just doesn't seem like a group of people in the neighborhood want to find that resolution. And, but that group does want to paint a narrative. They want to paint the narrative that they speak for all of Country Bluff, and I can assure you they don't. There's a lot of hardworking people in Country Bluff that don't have time to show up to every meeting here and don't have time to talk up here or don't wish to. They don't even have time to show up for our meetings. And we had a meeting the other night on Friday after the last meeting here, and that same group of people showed up in force and with pitchforks and fire in their eyes and anger, okay? And they wanted to put Dan Ruda on the spot and put me on the spot for trying to find a resolution. And they were so mean that by the end of the meeting, Rick Thomas decided he was resigning from the board, okay? And then, that was Friday. By Saturday afternoon, my wife was so stressed. We spent the night in the emergency room over at Cox. She's still in distress. And I just can't believe the behavior of that group of people. So, with that being said, I just want to hit a couple points quickly. Many of us, not in that small mob, believe that Dan Ruda has every right to develop his property. The man has sat on it since 2006, and he's provided free trees and a free view while he paid the taxes, okay? That doesn't make up for him taking the trees down in the way he did, and, but he has shown contrition, which is a start. And Rick Thomas and I met with him, tried to work out a deal that we would hope the community would accept. And a lot of people said, yes, that's great, yeah, that's great, but that group, that same group, showed up in force and misrepresented it and didn't understand it and didn't want to have anything to do with it. And Dan Ruda gave up a lot of concessions, including selling the lot back to the community at the price he paid for it. So it's just, I mean, I don't know what more he could have done, and I don't know what more I could have done, but I've resigned too. Rick and I both resigned on Monday. So of the two of them, the two groups, or Dan Ruda and his group, one of them's reasonable and one of them's unreasonable, and it's not Dan Ruda's group. So last, I just want to say that I apologize for the whole community for the behavior, and I expect the continued behavior of that group. So what I'd like to say is it's time for us to trust you up here and let you decide what's best for Branson and keeping our community in mind. So I trust you. I know a lot of people I've talked to trust you to do the right thing. And we just appreciate that, you to consider our community when you make your decisions. It really is that simple. So letter's a little bit longer. If you read it, if you have time. And thank you for letting me speak. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Madam Clerk?
Representative Brian Seitz, 1805 Miller Drive, speaking on legislative update and special presentation.
Good evening. For the record, I am Brian Seitz, 1805 Miller Drive, Branson, Missouri. And I want to congratulate all of those who won. This is my first chance to be here since the last election, and I would like to congratulate the new Board of Aldermen and the mayor on a job well done. I'm really looking forward to working with the city to promote whatever legislative agendas that you may have. I think most of you know now that I sponsored House Bill 1249, part of your legislative or the previous board's legislative agenda, and I fought very, very hard to see PTSD recognized as an occupational disease for firefighters, police officers, and first responders. I stood on the House floor for 5 hours before I was called on. I guess that's the record this year. I think second place, they stood on the floor 2 hours. So I stood there for the city of Branson and the city of Branson employees to see that they were well served in Jefferson City. That bill did make it to the Senate. I'm the first House member to get that type of legislation to the Senate, where it was chopped off of what we called the Christmas tree because it was added as an amendment in Senate Conference Committee. I'm going to refile that bill next year. I know who the enemy is. The enemy happens to be lobbyists that work for the insurance organizations. They do not want to see bills like this presented. And we now know who they are, and I now know how to more accurately represent you given that 4 months of experience. So anything that you can bring to me that we can, I assume I can agree on 99% of it, that you would have as a legislative agenda, I'd like to be there for the city and work on that in Jeff City at a state level. At this time, I have a special presentation, and this is the first time that I've ever done this. It's a certificate of recognition, and it's from myself as the representative of the 156th District, and this is what I call the Champion of Freedom Award. And this is going to an individual whose commitment to the values of individual liberty and personal freedom I'm proud to recognize as being Branson Mayor Larry Milton. And this is the first ever Champion of Freedom Award. So if you could come down, I'd love to present this to you. I'm going to be presenting this type of award to numerous individuals throughout the community, Hollister and the other cities that I represent. But Larry, you took a lot of heat for the past year or more. And with some of your opinions, I think the people spoke very loudly in your election that you are a champion of freedom. And I'd like to present this first certificate of recognition to you.
Brian, he'd rather have ribs, so, you know. He'd rather have ribs.
Oh, Bill. Madam Clerk? Thank you, Representative Seitz.
Our next speaker is Gary Gromans, 350 South Wildwood Drive, Branson, speaking on monuments.
Gary Groman, 350 South Wildwood Drive, Branson, Missouri. When I spoke last time, I was talking about the way tourism tax dollars were used, and I related it to the monuments. And as Alderman Fenton pointed out, quite frankly, the monuments might have been a justified use, and I don't disagree with that. I might disagree with the way it was done, but I don't disagree with that. But even more disheartening was when I heard that in one of the previous sale attempts, we were offered $14,000 for those monuments. Now, even if I'm off a little bit, let me suggest that the $1 million that Branson spent for those monuments is probably the best $1 million we ever spent. Those monuments are worth more to us than anyone else in this world. What do we stand for? Veterans, patriotism, and the reason it's probably justifiable expense is because it wasn't spent for any business. It was spent for veterans to bring people to Branson, and we've all heard this 100 times, the rising sea raises all the ships. My suggestion to you is forget trying to sell them. Let's find a way to properly, to display them to our maximum advantage. And one thing I would suggest is the one we have downtown inside that Liberty Plaza might be perfectly displayed out on the roundabout. I'm sure with some innovation, something could be done there. Another thing I would suggest is that the Branson Veterans Memorial Garden is such an asset. Ben Kinnell's spent so much time and effort on it. Why don't we try to check with Silver Dollar City and see if they would consent to selling it to the city as a park? Maybe a condition would have to be that their sign stays there, but that's all right. But at least then we wouldn't have election signs and stuff there when election time came up. But I mean, there's just so much we can do to our advantage. So I would forget selling them. I mean, $1 million, personally, I think we got a bargain. And thank you for reemphasizing that for me, Alderman Fenton.
Thank you, Gary.
We have no other speakers.
Thank you. Well, that's some food for thought. That one statue downtown, put it at the roundabout.
It's a nice location.
Yeah. Next is the consent agenda. Are there any items that any member of the audience would like to move down from the consent agenda to ask additional questions or make comments? Any items the board would like to move down? Madam Clerk, would you please read the items on the consent agenda?
Your Honor, the items on the consent agenda are as follows. Approval of the Board of Aldermen minutes for the May 20th, 2021 study session, May 25th, 2021 regular meeting. Acknowledge receipt of advisory part board minutes for the April 2021 meeting. Final reading of Bill Number 5986, an ordinance approving annexation of the property located at 134 Country Bluff Drive, Branson, Missouri. Final reading of Bill Number 6002, an ordinance approving the intergovernmental agreement with Taney County and the City of Branson for the county to provide funding toward the cost of the city's planned 2021 public sewer system upgrade for Morris Hospitality property construction, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6003, an ordinance amending the adopted 2021 budget for the City of Branson to adjust monies in the Tourism Fund for payment to the Branson, Missouri Regional Airport TDD. Final reading of Bill Number 6004, an ordinance approving the contract with Arvis Bank for purchase card services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6005, an ordinance approving the contract with Central Bank of Branson for banking services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6006, an ordinance approving high-density residential HDR zoning for the property located at 1487 North State Highway 265, Branson, Missouri. Final reading of Bill Number 6007, an ordinance approving low-density residential LDR zoning for the property located at 631 Shady Drive, Branson, Missouri. Final reading of Bill Number 6008, an ordinance approving a memorandum of understanding providing 4 school resource officers, 1 for each Branson School District campus, and authorizing the mayor to execute the MOU. Final reading of Bill Number 6010, an ordinance approving the lease agreement with Cox Medical Center, Branson, and authorizing the mayor to execute the lease agreement. Final reading of Bill Number 6011, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Sentinel Emergency Solutions for self-contained breathing apparatus equipment and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Your Honor, that concludes the reading of the consent agenda. The floor is open for a motion approving all items on the consent agenda.
Look at you go. We have a motion and a second. Please vote on the consent agenda.
The result of the vote is 6-0. Your Honor, the next item is a presentation by Branson County for the advancement of music and theater.
We will begin with a staff report from Stan Dobbins.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, I was contacted, I believe it was probably in January almost, by Mr. Bob Nichols, the president of BAAMT, and requested that he be allowed to permitted to present to you as a board to explain what the mission of BAMT is, along with promoting their theaters group. And so I will now turn it over to Mr. Nichols for his presentation, because he's a performer and I am not.
Got that right.
Thank you, Administrator Dobbins. Do I need to give my address?
Yes.
I'm Bob Nichols, 234 Sunset Cove, Branson, Missouri. I appreciate the opportunity, Mayor Milton, Aldermen, city staff, administration, to come down and talk to you all about BAM. I've been talking to several of you off and on, well, since September. Shortly after the sound diplomacy study results were released, I met with a group of industry stakeholders. We had been meeting off and on for, well, close to 2 years, kind of a round table discussion of just things that affect our industry, things that were going on. And I spoke to them this time about those sound diplomacy recommendations. What we did was we took a look at those recommendations from an industry standpoint. Our group are stakeholders, people who own and operate the theaters, pay the taxes, keep the lights on, et cetera. We saw a couple that weren't 100% germane. I want to be clear that we don't view sound diplomacy as the end-all, be-all for our industry. What we did was took the most important of those, the most salient, blended them with some of the recommendations we had ourselves as boots-on-the-ground operators of Branson's shows and theaters. And then we met with Administrator Dobbins, Assistant City Administrator Manning, Grant Sloan from the Chamber, Alderman Skanes was at the meeting, and myself. We presented those recommendations, and we suggested to the city that if that was something that the city of Branson could support, we would form a nonprofit and go to work in fulfilling those recommendations for our industry. Those things have come to pass. We've been working on them very hard since September. However, I know that several of you have heard some of these things, several of you have not, and that's the point of coming down here this evening. Our industry is, I think, very committed to fulfilling these recommendations that we've created. We have a good number of folks with us here tonight. How many of you folks are here with the theater industry this evening? And at the end of the presentation, I'll let you know who our board members are, and then we'll move on from that. I thought the easiest way to let you know who we are, why we formed, and a little bit about us, is to read to you an FAQ sheet that we just completed at our last board meeting. So let me just move right to that. I had copies of these. Did you pass those out, Lisa? Thank you very much. So who is BAM? The Branson Academy for the Advancement of Music and Theater is the advocacy organization for the music theater and ticketed live show industry here in Branson, Missouri. Who makes up BAM? Well, BAM consists of Branson's industry stakeholders who own and operate their theaters, as well as the owners, producers of our live ticketed shows and music businesses. What is BAM's mission? The mission of BAM and its membership is to affect, ensure, support the continued growth and long-term health of our music businesses, live shows, and theater industry through curation, education, and innovation. Who does BAM advocate for? BAM advocates for and fully supports equally all music, theater, and live ticketed show businesses in the Branson, Missouri area. BAM actions lift and grow the entire industry and thus benefit everyone who participates in our industry and ultimately our community. So why do we need BAM? Our music, live show, and theater industry is fundamental to Branson's overall tourism economy. BAM offers a unifying voice to work in cooperative actions and efforts to support and grow our businesses together. BAM works to be our industry's conduit to political and bureaucratic organizations whose operations can be beneficial to our industry. BAM works to provide vital feedback in cooperative efforts to protect the interests of our membership. So why did BAM form? The need to support and grow any industry is fundamental to continued success. Branson's Live Show Task Force commissioned a study of our local music, live show, and theater economy. The result of that study was blended with recommendations from our board, and once presented to the City of Branson administration, they encouraged the formation of BAM in the interest of fulfilling those blended recommendations stemming from the study. How is BAM different? BAM is not a membership organization. BAM is an advocacy organization. To help establish BAM and provide foundational operating costs, a number of stakeholders have become founding contributors. Other stakeholders were asked to join our founding contributors in this effort to fund our formation. and 49 of them did so. All businesses in the music, live show, and theater industry enjoy the full and equal benefits of BAM simply by being part of the industry. The entire music, live show, and theater industry will benefit from the work of all organizations who are seeking long-term health and good business practices within our industry. So how does one join BAM? Well, if you operate, or even if you're planning to operate a music, live show, or theater business within the Branson, Missouri marketplace, you are already part of our industry. And thus, BAM advocates for you. All music and theater industry businesses in good standing are eligible to receive full and equal benefits as long as they operate within our marketplace. And one more thing as a PS, how do you pronounce B-A-A-M-T? Just say BAM. The T is silent. If you want any more information, my contact info is right there. I would like to give recognition to our board of directors who have worked very hard alongside me to bring this organization to where it is. Larry Wilhite is our chairman from the Mansion Theater for Performing Arts. Jeannie Horton from Legends in Concert at Dick Clark's American Bandstand Theater is our secretary. Brandon Mabe, Branson's famous bald knobbers at Branson's famous theater, is our treasurer. Sheila Dutton, the Duttons at Dutton Family Theater, is one of our directors, as well as Lena Hughes, the Hughes Music Show at Hughes Brothers Theater. So if it's allowed and I have time, I would be happy to take any questions.
If you would stand by, and because I'm sure there'll be questions, but before that, I'd like to get questions, if anybody in the audience has any questions or
Absolutely.
comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody
have any questions or comments? Sure. I just want to say, please come up to the mic.
I'm Jody Medeiros, 215 Tyler Street. I'm the creator and producer of the All Hands on Deck show. I just want to say I'm very proud to be a part of this organization. It's an outstanding group of people who are here to make a difference. And Bob, you are a tremendous asset to this community, and I just want to say thank you from all of the producers. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Have you seen him move that fast before?
Yeah, I've seen him on stage. Anybody else in the audience? Hearing none, any questions or comments from the board?
Just a few, Bob. I've really supported what you guys have done, and I'm sorry that you guys have been on the back end of some pretty malicious statements within the community. At times, folks have questioned your ideas for getting into that. How much have you been paid for the last year to work?
I've worked as a volunteer for about 8 months now.
Zero funds. The work you guys have done is remarkable. Now, we had the sound diplomacy study reviewed, and I appreciate that you all and the board, if you'd raise your hands one more time, please. I know I've talked with Mama Dutton enough times about this, for what you all have done and taken this on the community. The issue of curing any ills within the industry, I was quite dismayed that I kept hearing things like, well, you need to update your theaters again. We've gone through all that. We need to be at a point in time where the city of Branson and the CVB and y'all's organization and theaters come together and heal. We have representation here on our, for the board, the chamber board. Do we have two? No. Mike Patrick sits on that as well. So 2 people on there to speak for the theaters. I think it's real important because as I've stated, and the mayor and I have talked about this, about 5 years ago, they came to me and they said, we need some help on a buy in the second, third, and fourth quarter. And the city was going to carry over about $300,000, and the CVB was going to carry over about $1 million. And I said, well, why don't you set aside some money to do some special marketing in the fourth quarter? And I got back was, well, we support the theaters, but they have their own problems, and we're not going to wind up helping. And I thought that set things in motion that don't need to be in motion. Whatever has been in the past is in the past. whatever you guys work for in the future to make your system better, to teach better business practices that came out of that, to deal with the issue of the ticket prices and the quality of the shows. I think you guys are trying to take that on. I don't see it as the role of the CVB and the city of Branson to tell theaters how to do anything. I think we ought to support them, and I think we all do. I do, and I appreciate the work you guys have done under a lot of duress. I know the amount of hours that you put in it, Bob, and I know the amount of hours that the board's put into it, because I've been over and I've spoken to them before. And they have ripped me a few times, but that's okay. That's what we get for being alderman. But I very much appreciate what you would do, what you are doing. I would encourage the CVB and the city and BAMP work together to coordinate to effect changes to the website and other marketing avenues and any ways that we can work together to make the theaters a better place, because as that happens, our bottom line increases, and I've not really liked what I've seen as far as revenues out of theaters for FY 2021. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, even though things have really, really picked up. Again, for the last time, I really appreciate everything you guys have done in these discussions to work to facilitate it, and I think it needs to continue. Thank you, Bob, and the board very much.
Thank you, Alderman Skanes. If I could respond just briefly to kind of the overview of your statement. We are also focused on marketing, and that's why we seek to work with our marketing organizations. But marketing is only one of the actions that BAM is undertaking. There were a lot of recommendations from the sound diplomacy study. Of course, we've come up with our own. And as the folks who run the industry, we know what our challenges and ills are, and we're willing to take all of them on as a group of stakeholders. So marketing is one important action that we're taking, but it is only one of the elements of our mission.
I think it's really important. How many people do you represent, or was it 123, 128?
We have 5 what we call our charter members. They're the folks who put the money in to form our organization. We had 47 of the shows and theaters step forward and also put up money to help us in formation, to help us produce our first marketing effort. But we represent, or we actually advocate for, at the last count I had, 115 shows and 33 active theaters in Branson. All of them have equal access to all of the benefits of BAM.
Thank you.
Any other aldermen?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just, I have met with this group once, and it is a group, and, you know, some of the stuff that Alderman Skanes said, true, but I also thank you for clarifying how to say it as BAM, because your board of directors is an explosive group, and so I've actually went the A different, and I've called it the bomb. So
Okay, we'll take the bomb.
yeah, but thanks for all your work, and I see great things ahead for this group.
Thank you, Alderman Whitus.
Yeah, and real quick, yeah, what they've said, you've done a great job with this. I've been around here a while, and I've seen a lot of different people attempt to do this same type of thing. And this one so far, with the amount of people that you have, 100+ different personalities, so far I think everybody's running smooth. And I think you can get some traction on this, and this is the best version I've seen of this in 30 years, so.
Thank you, Alderman C. I think in response to that, if you want somebody to juggle cats, you should get a cat juggler. I feel like that's me.
You look like a cat juggler.
I have the scratches.
I just had a question. I'm new. I wasn't a part of any of the meetings or anything
Sure.
before. So I'm just reading through this, and you said this, it's not a membership, but then it says, you need to be in good standing. What is, if it's not a membership, what's good standing?
Rather, I think the easiest comparison is our Convention and Visitors Bureau. The Convention and Visitors Bureau doesn't have members. They advocate for all of the different businesses in Branson. So as an industry advocacy organization, we advocate for all of the shows and theaters. The people that we call members are the 115 shows and the 33 operating theaters. But that's not just shows and theaters. We're the music industry group as well. In fulfillment of some of the other recommendations, we're working on diversification of product. We're innovating in our box offices. We're innovating in our production values. We're doing economic development. We've already been part of the installation of a new digital sound recording studio here in Branson. I don't have to go into all the things we've accomplished and the things we're trying to do, but the simple answer is our members are all of the members of our industry.
But, okay, I'm lost. What's good standing?
Sorry?
What does good standing mean?
People who have a business license with the city of Branson have paid their taxes. I think probably a very similar definition to what the city has for a business in good standing. It's not enough to simply come to Branson and say, I own a business and want to participate in the benefits of your organization. I think one needs to actually own a business, and to own a business requires, as you know, specific licensure and things like that.
So they just have to have a business license with the city of
In our
Branson?
industry, that's correct. If you're in our marketplace, and it's our board of directors, so we take every individual case and evaluate it on its specific merits, but we serve the Branson, Missouri marketplace at large. It's not confined to the city limits.
Okay, so, but I mean, the good standing just means they just have to have a business license in the
Got
city
to
of
have a
Branson?
business in good standing, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Well, let me say, nobody wants to sell show tickets as bad as I do. So. Really? Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm right up there. I went to the first presentation whenever that first, when was that? The presentation when we all came and we listened to this.
A couple months ago.
I do have a couple of questions. Well, I've been approached about questions about, first of all, what is the relationship with the chamber?
Well, we're working on developing a mutually supportive relationship with the chamber and CVB. These things take time. We're working with the current leadership and culture to find a place for us. We fully support their actions in marketing for our community, and what they do to help market shows and theaters, we're very grateful for. However, as an organization, we see a need for industry-specific marketing. I see the Chamber and CVB as an organization that casts a very broad net from outdoor sports and baseball and kayaking and lakes right down to our hotels and motels, our restaurants, our retail, our attractions, and our shows and theaters. But being part of a broadcast net is one thing. Shows and theaters, we believe, and we think the facts support, that they are the #1 attractor to the Branson marketplace, and as such, we want to make sure that that area, that our industry receives the marketing push that it deserves. But again, now you and I are just talking about marketing. We have a lot of other recommendations that we're trying to fulfill, but we do hope to have a mutually supportive relationship with our chamber and our CVB.
Well, and again, I'm just asking questions because I've been approached with these questions. So,
Sure.
And as a member of this board, I've been asked to ask these questions because, again, I want to sell tickets, and I've joined many organizations. I mean, I think we all have. We're going to do whatever we can do that's going to help sell tickets. And I don't think it's been, I mean, I've made this public before that in the past 5, 6, 7 years, I've not been a real fan of the chamber. I mean, things were going in different directions, and a lot of the theaters that I spoke to had that same feeling, that they felt like they were kind of thrown under the bus, and it was more about attractions and just different things that the shows, the #1 driver was kind of put aside. We do have there's new leadership, there's new staff there. I have seen a big change, in my opinion, at the chamber, that they are really trying to focus on the shows, and they're giving more, what's the word I'm looking for? More emphasis on the shows. I mean, I just wanted to say that because everybody knows I wasn't a big fan. I mean, we had problems, and I felt like they didn't really publicize us. The reason I'm saying this is because I serve as an alderman. I'm on the board at the chamber, and I've gotten some pushback from different people about why do we need another organization if the chamber's here to do that job? So I'm asking you so you can explain that.
Okay. I appreciate the opportunity. The first thing, just again, because it is the salient point, marketing, which is the responsibility of the CVB, is only one of the things that we handle, one of the actions we're attacking. But in that, we're also very hopeful that the CVB and Chamber is going to work with us in support. We've been in front of them twice for funding already. We've been denied both times, but we will continue to work with the organization to educate them on who we are, on how committed we are to the effort, and I feel secure that one day we will have a very mutually beneficial situation between our organizations. However, the Chamber and the CVB, in my opinion, are not the qualified body to fulfill the actions of the sound diplomacy study. The study was about our industry specifically. And Clay, if you imagine the body of knowledge you've gathered in working as an entertainer with the gold miners when you first came to town, working your way up through the ladder in our industry, getting better jobs, better gigs with better theaters and better producers, and then entering the market yourself as a theater owner. That knowledge is what we seek to tap within BAM. Our board of directors, you heard, they all own and operate theaters here in Branson. Our membership gives us the input that we need to drive these decisions and these actions. And all due respect to the board you sit on and to the group at the Chamber and CVB, we don't believe as an industry that either of these organizations are well equipped to fulfill recommendations to support and grow our industry. We believe that the best driver of action supporting our industry comes from within our industry itself.
Okay, all right. So when we all signed up and we paid our dues, or I wrote a check. I was there the first. I think I wrote a check that day.
Yeah, your support was important to our initial foundation for sure.
So I'm like, hey, if this organization can do something to drive, to help shows, I'm all in. And I would be, if somebody else approached me with something that I thought was going to be beneficial to our industry, I would be behind that too. A couple of people that have asked me questions about is in the meeting, it wasn't told, hey, we got this funding, but it was told that it looked like we were going to get $150,000 in funding. So now the question I've received, and I have the same question, that funding, if it doesn't come, how is this organization going to thrive and do the things that it needs to do to help the industry? Because I don't know the process of getting that funding and how that all works. I'm assuming it's the TCED, right? Is that where that's yeah. Is that some of it? Maybe you can answer that question, but that's the question I've had from a few.
Sure.
If that funding doesn't happen, I guess the question is, can the organization still do the things that you want to do without that funding?
Okay, and that's a very good question. I appreciate the opportunity to answer it in this forum. First of all, at the meeting you're speaking of, I was very clear. I take very good notes. We discussed a ton of stuff that day, so I can understand a little bit of confusion. But I've never said that the city is giving us $150,000. I've never said TCED is giving us $150,000. What I reported were the exact words that were used in the meetings I've attended where we were given words of support. Administrator Dobbins is sitting right there. I can look him in the eye and all of you and say that at our meeting when the stakeholders and I had met and brought the blended recommendations down, Administrator Dobbins reported at the end of the meeting that he would work to see that the city supported our efforts. And the words he used were through ordinance and funding. It was not taken as a promise of funding. I'm fully aware of the processes that we have to go through to achieve funding. So what I've done is reported that these were the words I heard. I also met with on the other side, because we are talking about two sources, to clarify that. That's city funding, and you guys, probably more than anybody, are aware of what those sources are. We're working with Jamie Roush right now through the application process to apply for that money through the appropriate process. As far as the TCED is concerned, what I reported, again, not a specific dollar amount, because when we met, we'd never asked for a dollar amount and didn't have completed budgets for that. However, I met with Ann McDowell, who is the chairman of the MOC. In that meeting, I presented her with the budget just for the show guide, which was at that time around a $42,000, $46,000. Forgive me for not having the exact amount. The response was, and I would say this to Ann, as I will in front of you, that's a no-brainer. What else you got? Now, that's not I'm writing you a check, but that's the chairman of the MOC telling me she thinks what we've got is viable, worthy of funding, and encouraging me to pursue that funding through TCED. And that's what we've done. We've been in front of the TCED board, the MOC, the FOC, the CVB twice. That's 6 letters for the CVB, by the way, in case you're counting, because we did it twice. So we've appeared in front of the alphabet. We've done our due diligence in looking for funding in as many public sources as possible. And as the president of the organization, I see that as my direct responsibility to serve the board, which is what I do. I've got to seek funding from all sources. You may have seen articles. This answers the third part of your question, which is, what if we get no money? Well, if we get no money, I think that speaks of support. But in the end of that is, we have no public funding. So if you've been reading the newspapers and watching media, you'll know we have taken many actions to create our own funding as well. We're working on the food truck court over at our mall. We've been given the concession to earn funding for our organization through that parking lot. We're working on putting together a farmer's market. We're working on running events. We occupy a 35,000 square foot event center here in Branson, and our lease arrangement gives us the lion's share of the net revenues as donations to our 501. So we're working on many self-funding mechanisms. We're also working on mechanisms from within the industry for our shows and theaters to help support themselves in this action themselves. And when those are ready and approved by the board, we'll be glad to release those as actions we're actually taking. But the point is, I must pursue public funding to do my due diligence and fulfill my responsibility to the board. But while I'm doing that, we're creating our own funding mechanisms as well. Even when we apply to the city for money, we're not asking to be funded in perpetuity. We did not form to live off the public funding. We're an industry organization fully capable of funding ourselves. But the foundational period is the most important part. And I will say to all of you folks on the board and anyone who's listening as well, we do need the money, but I believe your verbal support, as Administrator Dobbins gave us, is the most important element of all. Because as you know, a lot of people want to speak for shows and theaters. A lot of people want to speak for various organizations. But whatever you're trying to accomplish within a municipality is always better served with the support of the city. Whether it's just words and funding, words, funding, and ordinance, however that support comes from the city, we're grateful, and we believe it's tantamount to the survival of our organization and our fulfillment of the mission to care for our own industry. Yeah. It's a lot of words for an answer, right?
That was, could you start over? I missed part of that.
Yeah.
But no, you do offer a lot of different things. I mean, with the theater and the what is it, a 500-seat theater or something like that?
520 seats in there.
Photography, recording, and I mean, there's many aspects to it other than just, hey, we're going to help you market your show.
There are a lot of benefits for shows. As a matter of fact, I'm surprised we haven't seen you yet for that free photography. We provide office space for Marshall Meadows, one of the best photographers in town, shameless plug. But the fact is, we provide space for him in our facility, and he has offered a 30-minute photo shoot free of charge to every member of our industry. Just call me and schedule it. If you need photos for brochures, for social media content, whatever you need pictures for, he's willing to spend 30 minutes with each of our members. And if you multiply that times 115 shows, it's a pretty big commitment.
Well, hey, I want to sell tickets as bad as anybody. So I mean, I hope it works out and this thing thrives and music shows thrive and everything's lovely. But I did need to ask the funding question because
problem.
That's what I'm here for.
I came for the hard questions.
That's right.
Thank you, Alderman Cooper.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. First of all, thanks for showing up and presenting tonight. I've heard about your organization, but it was very informative and helpful to get some more details, and so I appreciate that. And I am not part of your industry, but I recognize how critical and vital it is, as a part of the main part of our tourism, in our area. And so I appreciate that, and I respect what you're doing. I guess I don't want to put you on the spot because I don't know how much you were
That's
prepared for
okay.
tonight.
I've been with it from the beginning. I hope I can answer your question.
Well, I guess my question is, and maybe, this would be something to come back and visit on as well. I've heard the money component. What are some things that your organization or you specifically are looking for from the city? I mean, aside from funding, is there anything else that we can do to help support you, to help continue this organization to be sustainable and continue to progress and deliver on the things you guys are trying to do? I think, again, recognizing the importance of these industries to our community, I think we as a city need to, and as a board, need to look at this and say, well, what can we do to come alongside you and help support that? So do you have any, and if you don't tonight, that's fine.
I do.
Okay, I just wanted to kind of give you the opportunity to say, here's my ask, here's what I'm looking for the city to consider at least. So that was really my question. My other request would be, as you continue, on this adventure you're on, I'll call it an adventure, right?
I like the word.
What I would love to see is, and there's no set frequency, but I'd love for you to come back and keep us updated on your progress and what things are happening, and give us some feedback. This is working for us. We'd love to see the city maybe try this, or here's what we're doing different. Keep us informed as well for somebody like me who's not in your industry and maybe not as tapped into that. I would very much appreciate if you would just kind of give us semi-regular updates and kind of keep us informed. So those were my two. So what can we do to help? And just keep us in the loop and keep us informed. So,
Okay.
I'll shut up and listen. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for your questions. First of all, I definitely will keep you in the loop. I will say stay in communication. I communicate frequently with the city administrator, and I believe he was responsible for putting us on the agenda tonight, if I understand the process correctly.
Several times, actually.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate that too, Administrator Dobbins. And at your pleasure, when you are ready for an update, I wouldn't mind coming down here every meeting or once a month to speak about BAM, because that's what I do all day, every day. But I'll definitely keep you informed in as much frequency as you feel like you need. The other thing you brought up, you asked, what could the city do for us? And the first thing is, you're doing it right now. Speaking in support of our organization is a unifying force within our industry. I believe that I think that's vital to what we're doing moving forward. So your words of support are very important for the shows and theaters to hear that there is support coming from the city. As Alderman Cooper had said, there are concerns in our community. How does the city council feel about our organization? How do other organizations feel about our shows and our theaters and industry? So expressing yourself frequently and letting folks know that you do support our #1 attractor, I think, is one of the most important things you can do. Another thing the city can do is also already being done, and that is give us a voice. Several times already during ordinential procedures, and I think you have an ordinance relating to shows and theaters coming up for a first read tonight. We played a large part in crafting that ordinance. In the first place, fair disclosure, I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission, so we saw that a couple of times. Then the shows and theaters were asked for input. Our group got together. Did we discuss that, Clay, at the meeting you were at that day? Yep. So we were getting input from them also on just exactly how we're talking about the parking ordinance, the overnighting in parking lots for shows and theaters. Also, we were involved in the sign code rewrite. When sign code was rewritten, BAM had not officially formed. But as I mentioned at the top, a group of us, a group of the stakeholders here in Branson had been meeting for almost 2 years, just discussing roundtable style issues and challenges in the industry. And when the sign code came up, as a commissioner on P&Z, I was able to talk to our shows and theaters and bring relevant topics from them to the rewriting of the code. So your words are important. It's important that we have your ears so we can give input into ordinential issues that also affect our industry. And in the event that that works out, the funding is very important to us too. So I appreciate your question. Hope I answered it.
You did. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
could I add just a little bit more clarity to a couple things?
please.
First and foremost, I had also heard after our first meeting, hey, the city promised to give BAM $150,000.
You and I were both there.
I have no idea where that came from.
Me either.
But Mr. Nichols and I had another meeting after that, at which I thoroughly explained that we have two possible funding mechanisms. And I want to make sure the board is brought up to speed on this as well. We have what I always refer to as our charitable funds. Those are dispersed through a board, through a group. They can only go to a nonprofit. And then we also have what are called our contingency marketing funds that basically we provide a certain amount of money to the convention center for marketing. There is a contingency part of those funds that when those monies come back, the money that comes back from the convention center is contractually obligated to go back to the CVB. However, there is a $125,000 contingency fund in there. And if there is any money in there, which is what Mr. Nichols is talking about applying for, I had the opportunity to meet with him and his board yesterday, and we brought even more clarity to the table. They chose, and I truly appreciate this from the heart, they chose not to even consider asking for the charitable money because they didn't feel that was right to take any funds from those organizations, and I truly appreciate that. Secondly, they will be, I believe we're working on an application for the contingency funds, and they were advised that that also has to go through the finance committee no one can promise any amount because ultimately it's the board's decision on what you all wish to do with those funds, if anything. I would also say, and I really was appreciative of hearing Bob say it a moment ago, because one of the things that I heard distinctly yesterday visiting with their group, and I am strongly encouraging, and I have continued to do so, is that I believe in my heart this only works if we do bring all three of those elements together. The chamber, CVB, the city of Branson, which quite honestly, financially, we are very restricted. Just because they are tax dollars and they're extremely restricted tax dollars. They cannot be used for any administrative purpose. But the CVB, this group, I have heard from both of them, and what Bob said that really drove it home to me yesterday as well as the group was that the chamber is really focused on marketing. Your group is focusing on some of the other items within that. And that's why from the first meeting to today, and I will continue to do this, I am encouraging what we really need to do is for the three groups to sit down and become more cohesive and one than one group over here and another group over there. And I wanted to just say that publicly because I've said it and I want everybody to hear it. I've had talks with the chamber. I've had talks with you. I'm telling you, the synergy that I see right now, and Clay said it in a meeting previously, towards our theaters has been amazing to me. I have not seen, I've been here 9 years. I know I'm not a Bransonite, but it's the best I have seen since I've been here. And I believe we are truly making progress, and we are going to be laser focused on this item, but it's going to take all of us together to get there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Bob, I have several questions. I am not in the theater business, never have been. My wife and I were an ancillary business, and I think we've developed great relationships with many of our theaters over a 20-year period of time. So when BAM, I need to take the T out. When BAM initially started, my phone rang off the hook. And so I think this is a great opportunity in a public forum for me to share with you many of the questions I was asked, to allow you an opportunity to dispel some of the questions I had. And several of the initial calls they were questioning paying a $500 fee, and they thought it was a membership fee, paying a $500 fee because it was represented to them that you were assuring that you would have the ability to obtain the $150,000, $125,000 contingency fee from the city and a significant amount of marketing dollars from the TCED.
I can answer that again fairly easily. First of all, I never said that.
Okay.
Those words have never come out of my mouth. I've been crystal clear in my reception of the process for applying for possible funding from the city and from TCED or CVB, however that direction has to go. So I've been very clear on that and have never used those words at all. I would ask perhaps in another forum that you and I could sit and discuss who made those calls so we can clarify with them specifically.
Actually,
it's a gross misstatement.
Okay, well, what's great about this is this meeting's recorded, so those that had those questions, right, they can just listen to this and get some clarity.
Perfect.
So thank you for that.
And thanks for the opportunity.
You bet. When you say that you're representing 115 members, 115 shows.
Yes,
What
and
is it
pardon
you
me for
represent?
interrupting. We don't represent, we advocate. We will represent our collective views when they're asked for, but to say we represent those shows is not a totally accurate statement. We advocate for the shows because they're members of our industry.
Okay.
I apologize for interrupting you.
Because what I'm hearing you say is you're the voice of the 115 shows that we have in the industry.
I would clarify that by saying that our organization is striving to become the voice for the entire industry. I think that's a more clear way to put it.
Okay. And let me save that for a few minutes. 47 or so, what was the number of shows that have actually?
47 shows in theaters.
47 shows in theaters have either paid $500 or they're paying $500 over time.
That's correct. It's a correct assessment.
Okay, so what will those 47 shows receive that the 115 won't receive?
Truly nothing. What they did was step up to support our organization during a foundational period when cash was extremely important for us to form. You know, it's very expensive to form a 501c3 and to take our initial actions. What they will receive is what every member of the industry will receive, even those who didn't pay up, and that's our first action, which is our show guide. The folks who did pay in the $500 in return received one-third page color ad in our show guide, which is available for purchase from anybody within the industry for $500. However, if you buy no ad in the magazine, if you don't put up any money for the magazine whatsoever, your show is still represented. All 115 shows are listed in the very first section of the book with equal proportion. However, in the back of the book, we have a section for our foundational members who added additional money to the organization for it to survive. They will all have larger ads because they paid for them. Same opportunity everybody has.
Okay, so Without public funding, will you be able to produce the printed show guide?
Yes, sir. We have adequate funding now to print the guide. What we're really seeking is the money to market the guide. 60,000 full-color books sitting in a box don't do anybody any good. So we're hoping to jumpstart that process by money from the city or money from another public source.
I need to ask a question that I've been asked only a couple times, but if the show guide doesn't, if the printed show guide doesn't materialize, will they get their $500 back?
I can say yes, because we have all that money still in the bank for the show guide. However, the show guide will be printed. The layout is nearly 100% complete now. Excuse me, and Walworth Printing has reported that as soon as we write the check and send them the copy, they'll have it back in 6 days.
Okay.
But I do also want to point out that the printed part of that guide is truly the least important part of the guide. The most important part of that show guide is our online version because it's interactive. It also has a PDF downloadable element, and it will be available online. The bulk of the money, I don't want to assign a percentage, I might misspeak. We're only actually mailing out less copies than what we're printing because a lot of those guides will be distributed through our shows and theaters. If you remember the way things were in the old days, you went to see a show and at the end of the show they said, hey, while you're here, you got to go take in Clay Cooper's show or the Dutton show, and we pushed each other. So this is our ability to push each other. But the bulk of that marketing money, the vast majority of it goes to push the online and interactive version because we all know that the digital side of it is much more important than the print these days anyway.
Sure.
Makes it more available. So the print guide, that's a done deal. We could print that and deliver it. Most of the funding mechanisms work as reimbursements anyway. You have to have the money to print the book before you can be reimbursed for the book from public funds. So we're prepared to launch forward with that now.
Okay, but if the printed guide isn't printed, they'll get their money back that goes to the third
Yeah,
page.
I don't have any problem saying that, although it would require a vote of the board.
Okay.
Hello, board.
Hello, board. Fair enough. You had made a presentation, this is in the form of a question, not a statement. You've made a presentation for $150,000 and included a 20% administration fee, which is $33,000.
To the CVB?
Yes.
Yes. Well, to the TCED, MOC.
Okay, so the 22% of admin fee, that would be a fee going to BAM.
Absolutely. All the plans in the world are fantastic, and funding the marketing, if the city chooses to do that, will be gratefully accepted. Someone's got to push the buttons and pull the triggers. We've been working with 4 consultants on putting our marketing plan together. A couple of them are the same consultants that our CVB uses, but we've reached out to other sources because we don't necessarily want to duplicate anything, and we do have our own ideas. But those consultants need to be paid. Office space needs to be paid for. It requires phones and insurance. Our insurance alone was almost $1,800 for the year. Doesn't sound like a lot unless you're bootstrapping a company. So yeah, operational expenses are necessary. The city gives their, RFPs their part of the tourism tax fund, the 25% spent for marketing. And as I understand it, they don't allow operating expenses because that money goes to the CVB, who already receives 22% operating expenses from TCED. And that's where we derive the percentage. We went with the locally pervasive percentage. I understand that nationwide, a percentage for operating an organization like this is 38%. However, our CVB operates at a respectable 22%, and I figured we could do that too. Want to be good stewards of the money.
So explain how that's not, how it's not duplicating what our CVB is currently doing, because they have guides they mail out, right?
Yeah. Well, in the first place, they mail out a vacation guide. Again, as I was talking about the broad net they cast, the vacation guide is pointed at absolutely anybody who has any interest in Branson for any reason. Originally, our budget included postage and printing so that we could duplicate their mailing list with an individual show guide to every address. But through working with our consultants, we realized that there are many reasons the CVB casts such a broad net for mailing out their vacation guides, and those people are not targeted for shows and theaters specifically. So we want to mail out about 10,000 copies ourselves who are direct to people who are interested in shows and theaters in Branson, not necessarily nothing against any of the other great things that make our community work, but we didn't need to be mailing our guide to people who were interested in bringing their kids here to play baseball, who wanted to come for a fantastic golf vacation.
Or fishing,
So,
or, yeah.
Absolutely. So we aren't duplicating what they're doing. We're focusing our book on people who are specifically interested in shows and theaters. And then, again, that goes for the rest of our digital marketing, because we have a digital marketing plan beyond just pushing the show guide. But again, it's laser focused on people who are interested in shows and theaters. And with the digital marketing working the way it does today, all of you know we can zero right down to people with incredibly narrow demographics, psychographics, economies. Yeah, so we won't be... I'm sure that some of the things they send out do reach people who come here for shows and theaters. Excuse me. But we'll be narrowly focused on our industry segment.
Great. Would you also address, when you mentioned members in good standing, several called in with concerns of, at least what they heard, was some of the definitions of good standing was they had to be at certain price points. They couldn't sell their tickets at certain discounts, addressing some of the FIT companies. And just, this is giving you an opportunity to respond.
Sure.
And so when the question came up about, well, how are you going to monitor that? The response they received was that you're going to gather up all of the theater's financials and send them to a disinterested third party in Nashville so they could review the books. You want to expand on that?
It's a lot to expand on, because there's about 10 different things we've all discussed as an organization that are blended into one kind of Chinese phone call rumor there. We've discussed different opportunities to normalize our rates, just like the hotel industry does. They have rate integrity meetings and seminars on a regular basis. So we have had conversations, and if you remember from the Sound Diplomacy study, it was their #1 recommendation.
Absolutely.
We take a look at normalizing those rates. However, some of the things that have worked their way into the rumor or question that you've received are frankly illegal. It's not legal for an organization to price fix. We've had no discussions of price fixing. We have had discussions about data cooperative and data collective. It's very important to the industry to know how Clay Cooper's box office is doing, to know how Sheila Dutton's box office is doing. But those are private and confidential numbers to each individual company. If they choose to share that with us, we will send them to a disinterested third party, because nobody needs to know individual numbers. But wouldn't it be great if, as an industry, we knew what Clay and Sheila and Brandon and Jeannie and 15 or 20 or 30 other theaters were actually doing? Just provides us with another metric. But there are no requirements for providing your data to BAM. There are no requirements for setting your price at a certain level. There are no requirements whatsoever. And I'll be happy to provide you with a copy of our bylaws and our code of ethics as well.
Okay, because, some of them heard that, and some of them specifically asked, they were concerned about price fixing.
So again, perhaps in another setting, if you wanted to discuss who those folks were, I'd be glad to call them directly and make sure and dispel rumors.
They're going to be able to listen to this, and if they want to, I'm not the middleman.
Okay.
If they have an interest, they'll contact you. And,
acceptable.
And for the record, my heart and soul is with our theaters.
We appreciate that.
I will support any individual or any organization that will help make our theater industry healthier.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mayor.
No question about that. Last meeting, actually, I was going to save this for my mayor's report, and I still might, depending on how far this conversation goes. But at the last meeting, I created some mayor's ambassadors. And in that meeting, I mistakenly used the word committee, but I've have ambassadors to help me as a mayor and this board accomplish some of our goals this year. And one of them was I appointed Marshall Howden as the mayor's ambassador to music and shows. The reason I did that was I think you'll acknowledge that you're not, and when I know I used the word represent earlier and you used the word advocate for, but just to make a point, Steve Presley, I don't think he's a member of BAM.
He's a member of our industry, and we do advocate for him, his show, and his theater. As a matter of fact, at the MOC meeting, he's on the record as saying, I never asked for your advocacy, but I'll take it.
Okay. Sight and Sound,
Same thing. They didn't ask us for advocacy, but every time we run an ad advertising shows and theaters in Branson, when we run social media, when we stick our digital marketing out there, we are advocating for Sight and Sound Theater.
okay, because my intent, what I'm looking for is to have a voice that represents all the theaters, that actually sits with the Presleys, the IMAX, the other shows that weren't part of the 47 that have signed up.
Sure.
So I think it's important for myself and this board to hear from a collective all. We have, one thing we've had in this town for a long time is we have different silos, right? We've had the Theater League in this town for I don't know how many years. They don't represent all the shows. They represent a percentage of the shows, right?
Yeah, I believe they do.
And then we have the CVB Show Task Force, right?
Yes.
Which is another silo.
Many of our board members sit on that committee.
Well, yeah, and I think there's many members of the Theater League that are members of BAM.
However many members they have, they are all members of BAM.
Okay, which is a portion of our music and theater industry.
The Show League or BAM?
The Theater League, you're saying every single Theater League member is a member of BAM?
Absolutely.
Okay, so 100% of Show League are members of BAM, but within that is a percentage of all the shows and theaters in Branson.
Within the Show League, I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Okay, Show League has 50 members. You have 50 members. Okay, Show League has 10 members. You have 50 members. You're saying that these 10 are included in your 50, right? But it's not representing all the voices in the show and theater industry in Branson.
I would beg respectively to differ. Perhaps Sight and Sound Theater or Steve Presley didn't give $500 to have a larger ad in our magazine or to support the foundation of this organization. However, we've included them in our advocacy already. I have met with Cynthia Carson, the GM at Sight and Sound, multiple times. Mike Pittman, who does marketing out there as well. They were involved in the input that we gave the city on the on the parking lot ordinance. We also spent considerable time talking with Sight and Sound so we could advocate for them when you guys took up the animal ordinance, because that directly involved them as well. So I would say that 115 shows and 33 theaters that are operating are all, if you want to use the word, members of BAM. We advocate for every single one of them equally. No member gets any larger portion of our action or receives any larger benefit than anybody who owns a show or theater in town. And that was by design.
Would it be fair to maybe say you represent the industry, then I think. I mean,
It's true.
We're kind of getting into semantics here.
I
but-
appreciate that, Alderman Fenton. Semantics are where we're breaking this down into at this point, whether you use represent or advocate, if you use member of a BAM or member of the industry. But I would suggest that a member of the industry is a member of BAM in that we advocate for all of them equally, every single one of them.
Okay, we don't need to belabor this. I guess we'll just take the position of, we'll see how that unfolds. And I don't have, where did my alderman go? I don't have any other further questions. Anything?
I
you-
just have one.
Yeah.
Is that a Razorback on your jacket?
You thought it was a Razorback?
Is it? I can't see from this far.
You talking about this?
Yes, sir.
No, it's a Shriner pen.
Oh, well, I apologize.
Would it have been better if it was a
Well, I
Razorback
was just
pen or
gonna-
worse?
I was just gonna give a woo pig.
right
I got a lot of pins at home. I'll wear whatever you guys need
Next
me
time,
to
if you
wear.
don't mind, Razorback.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I have one question. I remain confused. If you want to
Okay.
talk about planning issues or planning law, I'm right there with you. But when it's a theater industry, I'm not up to par. So, how did your board decide on vendors for your marketing and materials? Did you go through a bidding
For
process?
vendors? Yeah, at this point, we really don't have any vendors because we haven't really spent any money in that direction. Any of the marketing that has already gone out, I've fulfilled myself. And as an unpaid volunteer, we didn't think we really needed to take any bids on volunteer actions. But when we're in the position of actually spending the money, we will. As far as the print bid, we did receive multiple bids on our printing, and we have spoken to 4 different consultants on our marketing, digital marketing as well. So when it comes time to actually choosing one, the board will compare the different bids we've received and choose. I do want to make it very clear that I am not a voting member of our board. I'm an employee, an unpaid employee, but I'm an employee. I am the president of the organization, but not a voting member because I do not own a show, a theater, or a music-related business in Branson.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
With that, Bob, I appreciate it. I will say the same thing Stan said. If there's anything this city can do to help our theater industry, one vote, one opinion is I'm very supportive of our entire industry.
Thank you, Mayor. I thank you, Alderman. Thank you to the city administration and staff. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce ourselves formally and maybe straighten out a few rumors that were going around.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Madam Clerk?
The next item is an update from Tara Alfonso, Branson Lakes Area Chamber of Commerce and CVB on sports marketing.
All right, thank you all. As Lisa mentioned, I'm Tara Alfonso, Director of Sports Marketing and Development for the Branson Chamber and CVB, and just want to thank you for the invitation to come and provide an update on how the sports market is doing in our community. I also want to give credit to those who helped kick off the sports tourism arm of our market. Cindy Shook and Ross Summers saw the potential for this market in our community many years ago and put forth put down stakes in the ground to help our community benefit from this market. I'll talk a little bit more about where we are and where we've come from with this market in our community. But for those of you who don't know a little bit about me, I also wanted to share a little bit about my background. I'm born and raised in Springfield, Missouri. Grew up down here in Branson a lot, played here. My parents own a civil engineering firm in Springfield, so I spent a lot of time digging holes, running percolation tests, hanging out with the critters out there in the woods. So gained a lot of things from that. Sometimes I was lucky enough to get dropped off, at Silver Dollar City or Whitewater and go play around here for the day. And anyway, later lifeguarded at Whitewater, high school and college, completed my master's degree in business at Missouri State, Southwest Missouri, SMS at the time. And after that, planned a lot of events. I worked on a music festival as a backstage manager for 4 years. I not only was the backstage manager when that event occurred, when we brought in 18 to 22 entertainers over the course of 4 days, I helped plan that event prior, so got my experience with a little bit of music industry myself there. Worked at Big Cedar in event services for a few years, and then on the sales side, group sales at Big Cedar for a few years. So I was out there about 5 years in total. So many other experiences that led me to the opportunity to work with the Chamber and the CVB to promote the sports tourism market. Enough about me. So moving on, how do I click forward to the next one? Is there a clicker? Chad, do I point?
We did test it, I promise.
I point at you, or? There we go. Okay. While he gets that moving forward, just want to share with you guys that the sports marketing department is sports marketing and development. We focus on truly 4 core areas, and I'll explain a little bit more about those core areas of the sports market as I go through, but we have sales, event services, facility development, advertising, and marketing. The association for the sports travel market is Sports Events and Tourism Association. In 2020, September, they released a study that said this market produced $45.1 billion in 2019 in tourism dollars. Our community sees the tip of the iceberg of that. We're just over 65 million in impacts in our community. That full report is available at sportseta.org, and if anybody has time and interest, I encourage you to go and check out the website. Very professional organization that's truly growing this industry. Another interesting study that was done, according to a study by Hilton Worldwide Embassy Suites Hotels, 93% of parents surveyed have delayed or skipped buying something for themselves to pay for their child's sports travel. 92% are willing to forego family vacations, social functions, and family gatherings, and many other things to facilitate their children's sports travel. And one thing I would point out there is really what's happening is they're making sports travel a sportscation. So instead of taking a vacation, it's a sportscation. Whereas many other destinations have more facilities and venues and are benefiting from that. For example, this weekend in Wichita, Kansas, they have 12 plus basketball courts, and they're going to see 600 families this weekend in Wichita, Kansas, without the activities and the fun to go and experience when they're done. They want to be here, the organizers and event organizers, so hopefully in the future we'll be able to continue to grow our product. A couple fun facts, I don't know, did you all know that only 1.5 people on our team are full-time dedicated to sports sales? I say half because our sales manager splits herself between sports market and SMERF market, social, military, education, religious, and fraternal. And then, fortunately, have a great team who's willing to jump in when we have needs to help assist, volunteer, and use their expertise to help promote these events when their time allows. Just ways that we market to drive the event organizers to choose our destination. One example is travel to shows. Some of the shows we're going to this year are Sports Travels Teams Conference. We'll be a big sponsor there, the Sports Events Tourism Association's annual conference. We partner with Show Me Missouri Sports, the state group, and market our whole state together to drive tourism, and then Sports Relationship Conference. Some of the other ways we also do this is through advertising. Digital Edge sends out new e-newsletters to our market decision makers. Sports Events Tourism's e-newsletters, Sports Travel Magazine. We actually have a destination guide, and we're in the top position on their destination guide, or the destination top position on their destination guide, Sports Travel. Another fun fact that you may not know is that in addition to driving those heads and beds and butts and seats to our destination through the events that are occurring in our market, we also market through the events themselves. So for example, the Power Boats event, this particular event, we had coverage in 2019 of the Grand Prix of Missouri. It was seen 102 times in over 128 million households on 9 networks. And through that, we distributed our 30-second commercials, live marketing, and of course all 3 legs of our marketing, live entertainment, outdoor shows, and family fun. We pushed those commercials. couple other fun facts. Did you know that in January, you're seeing more business because events like the Rush or Branson Shootout put on by Southwest Missouri Rush now are coming in January. When we first learned this event was coming, I'm thinking, are they really gonna come the weekend after Christmas and New Year's, after you've spent your entire budget? And who's gonna go and stay overnight in a hotel? We're seeing those travelers not only one weekend now, but that expanded to 2 weekends this year. And fortunately, Missouri, the MONASP archery tournament was back this year. First quarter included everything from futsal to fishing, archery, gymnastics, resulting in over $5.7 million in economic impact. As I mentioned a minute ago, Power Boats has been here once already this year. This organization has historically only gone to a destination multiple years. They might repeat the same destination 2017, 18, 19, but not to the same destination in the same year. They're going to be in Branson 4 times this year. So if you missed the May 15, 16 dates, we encourage you to come out and see the June 19th, 20th, July 24th, 25th, and September 11th and 12th events. Real quick, I'm going to show you guys another event that we announced some exciting news about, and I'll continue explaining that one here in just a second, but I'm going to show you a quick video. The American Cornhole Organization, ACO, was one of the first groups to come back to Branson, host an event in 2020 safely in our community when we reopened. I talked to Frank while I was on furlough. Hey, we got the okay. The community's open, ready to host your event if you're ready to come. Within 2 weeks, he had people here in the community at the convention center. They spent over $10,000 a day on food and beverage. The center was pretty happy to have that business at that time, to say the least. Another interesting fact about that is Memorial Day weekend at the convention center has been a dark date since 2011. In 2011, they hosted a wedding. So what that means is now we have business in the center at a time when we were otherwise dark, and we have a commitment for them to be here for at least 2 more years for this event, which is a major. But because we supported them last year, they not only brought a major to us this year, they hosted a Pro Series event, and you'll learn more about something else exciting later, but I can't share that information right now. What I can share, however, is that this organization we announced with them last week, or Memorial Day weekend on Friday, that they will be hosting the World Championship with us next year as well. That is a week-long event that will bring between 600 and 700 families to our community to play cornhole and get out and explore. Something I want to mention that's very important to me is, again, our partners. And this, we don't do anything without our partners coming to the table. Cindy, Ballparks America, Convention Center, our folks out at the lake, our parks. We don't do anything without our partners making those events happen. At the Recplex, they have seen so far this year, Cindy Here's team has seen 30% increase in scheduled events compared to 2019. In January, the Branson Recplex team hosted an archery qualifying tournament with 261 archers that participated. In March, their team had mat sports with wrestlers, 410 wrestlers competed. This year, they have 4 Girls World Series events this summer. They have 2 new soccer tournaments with 3v3. To date, our Branson Recplex team has had 3 basketball organizations inquire about hosting events in 21 that they could not accommodate. They do a great job, and they're wonderful to work with. Ballparks of America, don't know if you all heard the news, but Babe Ruth League is returning with our Cal Ripken World Series this year. They have commitments from the 20 teams within the United States that will come, and several of the international teams. Few of those will be limited by restrictions in their own countries. but they're all committed to come as long as they can get here. If you haven't been out there to see the updates that our city and Ballparks of America have put in place, I encourage you to get out there and see what's going on. They've done a great job, and in 2019, they had less than 200 teams in our community. In 2021, they already have over 700 teams registered for events between the spring and fall. So we are very fortunate that they have moved forward and that everything happened pre-pandemic to make sure that could happen. If you want to get involved in that event, they have an Adopt a Team program for 20 teams, and Scott at Ballparks America can tell you more about that, but similar to the NAIA program, they really want to encourage the community to get involved, meet these kids, their families, help them understand what shows and attractions, events, activities they can participate and learn about, so they can go home and talk about all the great things they need to come back to see and their friends and family need to come back to see. So I encourage you to contact Scott out of Ballparks if you want to learn more about that. Something new for our community, as the world has shifted so heavily to virtual meetings and virtual trainings, and really the virtual events are going to be here to stay. The technology and potential for our community is really to help drive more tourism to our destination. Our chamber has partnered with Threshold 360 to offer virtual tours that will be available on the BransonChamber.com, ExploreBranson.com, and Taney County Partnership. So you can work with them, get a virtual capture of your facility from the parking lot all the way through your property in a very short period of time, and then use those tools to market not only on our Branson Chamber, Explore Branson, Taney County Partnership website, but also in your own marketing materials. Because people want to see, what is it that I'm considering buying, right? That visual that they can not only plan to make the decision, but also for us on the planner side, when we're working with sports planners, meeting planners, whatever planner, they like to go back and see, okay, what was it I saw? How did that all work together? So they have partnered on that, and we're really excited to get that going. The first 2 captures will include our convention center and Ballparks of America. Kind of something I've learned through my experience in this role on the sports side is really, what is the difference between a sports traveler and a leisure traveler? Really not much. They are a leisure traveler. It's just that the sporting event is what got their bum off the couch to get it here, get their butts in our seats and heads in our beds and experiencing Branson. One experience personally, I saw my nephew, we were down here, he's playing in the futsal tournament. And by the way, my family lives in Springfield, but they still reserved rooms and came down and stayed multiple nights to watch kiddos play. But I'm watching him and the kids down on the court, and I knew exactly where he was. I turned around, I'm talking to somebody, I look back and I'm like, where'd he go? He'd taken off his uniform, whole new outfit, and all of a sudden he's blending in among everybody else. I see that as what happens with our sports travelers. The difference between being at home and playing in a game at home is that oftentimes the team will go out to dinner or something after they get done with practice or a game in their uniforms. Here it's, hey, let's go back to the hotel, shower, clean up, and head out to a show or an attraction or wherever we're going from there. So you don't see them in that uniform and recognize this is who they are. But to kind of close, as I mentioned, our areas of focus are multi. Sales, we got to get them here. Service, we got to make sure they have a great experience while they're here and they want to come back. We want to advertise to get them here, and we advertise to get more people here through those events. And then facility development is on our radar, and we have a task force that's been working on that for a while to keep those conversations going. If you want to know more about what sports are coming in Branson, ExploreBransonSports.com is the website. This was designed with the organizer in mind. So the materials out there are to help answer those questions of the decision maker on the organizing side. We have an upcoming events page on there because we want to show them, hey, these are the type of events we host. But it's also a great tool for you guys to find out, hey, what's coming up, so I can make sure I staff properly so that I have enough people for these events. So upcoming events, ExploreBranson.com. And if you ever have questions, of course, contact me and Yvonne, and we're glad to answer those. So that's the end. Anybody got questions?
Thank you, Tara. Anybody in the audience have any questions or comments for Tara?
Uh-oh.
Who's that man in the purple?
Give him a time limit.
Yeah, time's up.
Yeah, try to keep
30-second time limit?
Jason Aldermen, President and CEO of the Branson Chamber and CVB, 4100 Gretna Road, Branson. I'm not giving my personal address for security reasons unless I have to.
Sorry, your time's up.
Okay.
Security reasons.
Thank you all for your support. Fact-finding, give me a call. Thank you.
That was it?
That's it.
Anybody else in the audience have any comments or questions for Tara? Any members of the board?
I'd like to be the first to say, just, you know, you guys are doing awesome with the sports marketing. You can't not see what's going on. I mean, whether it's, you know, the baseball tournaments, the cornhole. I mean, everything that's going on here is exciting. It's bringing people to our market that maybe, you know, haven't otherwise been here before, but they're seeing all the great things we have to offer and why they should come back, right? And so that's. And then you look around at places like, you know, Omaha and all that, you know, and you mentioned Wichita and all these places that are investing in this and putting, you know, large amounts of money, recognizing the value of this. So I think we're seeing, you made a comment, I think you said tip of the iceberg. And I think that's an interesting comment to make, and it kind of got my attention because what I see is what we've been able to do up to this point with the resources we have and the facilities we have, which are great, but what does that look like if we spend some money and invest and make it bigger and better? You know, I think Alderman Cooper's from Texas, right? And they say everything in Texas is bigger or something like that. So I would say in Branson, let's do it bigger here, and let's get these facilities built. Let's bring in these bigger events. And let's do what these other communities are doing and bring people to our area, because you can't, you know, and that doesn't, I don't think that takes away from the shows. I don't think that takes away from the attractions, and so would our city. I mean, everybody wins, right? The more people we get here, the more everybody wins. And so, I mean, I can't tell you enough how great I think this is as a parent with young children who are involved. I can relate to the spending more money than seems reasonable
Right.
on different things, but I'm glad to be able to do it. And I'm glad to, you know, watch my kids do those kind of things, and I know a lot of other parents would agree with me on that. So great job. I love this. Huge fan of what's going on and what the opportunities look like. So thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I ditto all of that. I mean, that's impressive. I mean, you're bringing that, like you say, that ain't hurting the show. I mean, getting them here is that's the purpose, getting them to town. You know what I mean? And if it's a cornhole or a football or soccer or whatever it is, getting them to town. I mean, you know, you get them here, and then it's our responsibility to, once they're here, to drive them to the Clay Cooper Theater or the Tanger Mall or the Duttons or wherever they need to go. That once they're here, that's my responsibility. But you guys are doing a great job getting them to town. I was going to save this for my report, but it's since you're talking sports, I got this email today from a citizen. Can I read that real quick? Sure. And it says, "Hey, Alderman Cooper, just FYI, I've been watching 12-year-olds play baseball at ballparks of America. Great time. I also get to talk to parents and welcome them to Branson. Several have shared with me that they were scheduled to go to Cooperstown to play this weekend. The team learned that Cooperstown was requiring the boys and coaches to be vaccinated. Ballparks of America does not. As a result, Branson wins. At least 6 teams from Texas and Florida, parents, grandparents, and friends came to Branson. From what I gather, all of them are having a great time, and several told me that they would be back to play baseball at Ballparks of America." So just thought I'd add that since we were on sports. So.
Thank you. May I share on that note?
Sure.
Ballparks of America shared with me that within a weekend of that announcement coming out, they had 100 teams sign up here. Wow. So that was huge.
That's pretty impressive.
Thank you, Clay.
Yep.
Bill?
I've been involved with this thing since day one when we kicked this thing off and we started having discussions, you should have seen how far and recognized how far we have come in the last 10, 12, 15 years when we really didn't have any sports marketing at the time. And now it shows. Wholeheartedly agree with Cody is that part of the discussions we've had about how we can invest in better facilities. We need more basketball courts. We need more softball fields. We need more baseball fields. We need the University of Arkansas to win the College World Series.
Let's not get out of hand, Bill. Let's not get.
But we need more facilities, and you're right. You build them and they'll come. But thank you all for what you've done. Jason, that even applies to you back there. It's come a long way. And folks that had not seen where we were sort of in the hole at the time, I think would be very, very surprised and very proud of what y'all done. Hats off to you.
Yeah, thank you for your continued and all of your support along the way. Can I add a note to give Jason a little plug and kudos? Before he officially joined our team, he reached out and said, hey, contact my friend over here at Encore Dance, because, you know, I think she might be able to bring a piece of business to Branson. Connected with the convention center, and she is bringing a piece of business to Branson Mother's Day weekend next year, another dark date. So, thank you, Jason.
Any other aldermen?
I'm just going to, Alderman C and myself raised boys doing baseball, and it is true, you spend more money on your kids. Yes, so I mean, you always had to buy the best bat, the best glove. But I just want to commend you on finding ways to use what we have. Yes, we know we need more, but with the futsal, the cornhole, the pickleball, the way things are growing and how you're able to use what we have to make it work, I just commend you and your group on that. That's a great job.
Thank you. Our goal is to find those holes and fill them wherever we can, you know, where it makes the most sense. Convention center, for example, if they have an association piece of business or corporate business that is going to help them get closer to Black, put that in there. If a sports business is going to bring us somewhere, let's put it in there. You know, it's all about finding how that puzzle fits best together. So, thank you.
Anyone else? I would like to say something that Jason and I touched on, and that is when Clay mentioned it doesn't matter why we get them to town. What we hear, what the CVB hears over and over again is doesn't matter the reason they come here. When people are introduced, if they're coming for a blank, whatever, once they're introduced to Branson, right, they fall in love with it, their friends, their family, they come back over and over again. So, boy, I really compliment everything you're doing in the sports market. And I agree with Bill that who would have thought this, would we be here today, you know, 10, 15 years ago? And I believe that there's a lot of support on this board to continuing to support and promote our sports marketing.
Right.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Is that it?
That's it.
All right.
Go sit down. Madam Clerk?
Your Honor, the next item is a presentation of the first quarter 2020 financials for the city of Branson.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. Those of you who sit on the Finance Committee, you have already seen this. It's just a little bit repetitive, so I'll try to make it quick. How about that? This is the first quarter financial update for 2021. This first slide represents all governmental funds, revenues versus expenditures, and for 21, we were 18.6 million versus 22.3. Expenditures were 12.9 versus 137 million. And I should say, I'll go back real quick. And well, you have to have a little bit of laughter during a finance presentation or you'll get bored, right? Okay.
That was intentional?
It was intentional. It's been up there for a long time, about maybe 8 years or so, but we keep it in there just to have a smile during a financial presentation. I wanted to say, for those of you who don't know and are new to the board, all governmental funds include all of the other funds with exception of the water and sewer funds, because those are known as proprietary funds, and the internal service funds as well. So this picture includes all the other funds with exception of those, okay? And then the next slide includes the general fund revenues by category. And so the general fund is one of the only unrestricted funds. And so this fund represents our license and permits, our court receipts, our leases and rents, charges for services. Those are the major category revenues. The license and permits for the first quarter increased by $16,884 from 2020 and decreased $182,000 from 2019. The one thing that I would like for you to see on this one is in 2019, we had 3 large permits that came through in 2019 at this time. That kind of skewed the trend just a little bit, so you'll notice that large gap. But for the increase from 2020, obviously, the pandemic started taking over. Courts receipts continue to decline, and then you have your leases and rents. They decreased by $65,000 from 2020. We did do some lease negotiations in November of 2019, which caused some of this decrease. The majority of the leases and rents are the Highway 76, and they are all calculated as a percent of sales. We have a base on that, and we have percent of sales for those businesses. So obviously the percent of sales will have some effect from last year to this year. And then we have those charges for services. General fund revenues and expenditures, and this is including all your transfer ins and your transfer outs. What we mean by the transfer ins, for those of you who don't know, those are things like your transfer outs is money that goes out to the TIF funds. Those monies come in through the general fund, and then we have to allocate them out to those special TIF districts. Also, we do transfer outs to the public safety fund, and we do a transfer out to the parks fund, and we call those our subsidies. And so we did decrease our subsidy for the pandemic year by 25%. And so both public safety and parks got a decrease, but those transfer outs also include those subsidies along with the convention center as well. So your revenues decreased by $1.7 million from 2020, and your expenditures decreased by $346,000 from 2020. This is your gross sales tax for all governmental funds. General fund sales is your retail sales tax, your 1%, your tourism tax, special revenue fund, that's your 4%, your 0.5% on food and beverage, your transportation tax, your 0.5%, and your public safety is your 0.5%. This is a picture from the first quarter, year over year, to show you in comparison. First quarter for the retail sales, 1% was 9.6% down compared to 2020. Tourism tax ended at 1.1%, up from first quarter of 2020. Transportation tax ended down 9.6%, and public safety tax ended down 9.7%. Those two are 0.5%, so those will kind of mirror your 1% retail. This is a look at your sales tax, your net of TIF, and why we present this is because we remove the TIF district so that you can see how the rest of the operational of Branson is doing. Your net general fund sales tax revenue for 2021 are $284,000 less than 2020, which is a 12% decrease in the net of TIF district. Net tourism sales tax revenues for 2021 are $45,000 less than 2020, which is a 2.9% decrease. And basically, that just shows you how the rest of the city is doing outside of the TIF districts. That's what that will show you.
Excuse me, Jamie, quick
Yes.
question. When you're looking at these quarter over quarter, are they the true January, February, March, after the lag time of getting information from the state?
That is the receipts. That is not activity.
Yeah, so these would represent what months?
So for sales tax, you're looking at January, and for tourism, you're also looking at January. So you'll look at sales tax goes back 2 months, tourism goes back 1 month, and we try to mesh those in together. So you're looking at January for the sales tax. So if you look at public safety and transportation and your general fund sales tax, it's always January activity for March receipts, because it's a 2-month time lag.
Okay, but when we were looking at the quarterlies,
I'm sorry, yeah. When you're looking at the quarterlies, that is as of March, so it's everything we brought in
So
as
is
of
it
March.
November, December, January?
Yes, mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then for the year, you'll see that coming up when we present the audit, but we have to accrue the receipts for January and February back into 2020 because those are activity for November and December. Yeah, that's how that works. And I think I messed up. I think I got ahead of myself, so give me 1 second. Okay, I already did that one right. Okay. This one is your public safety fund, special revenue fund for public safety. That's your 0.5%. And then obviously I've already spoken about, we do a subsidy from the general fund. Typically that's 7.6 million out of the general fund into the public safety fund. We did reduce it by 25% as a result of the pandemic. So this is kind of a picture. The bottom yellow piece is your 1.3 million. That's your what has come in, and then your top green, that represents the subsidy from the general fund. A total of that will be $2.8 million, and then your expenditures are 2.5. This is a look at your tourism fund, including your transfer ins and your transfer outs. The revenues and the transfer ins are 84,000 more than 2020, and your expenditures and your transfer outs are 59,000 more than 2020. And here's a look at your Parks and Rec Fund. And this is the other one that we do a subsidy for that we reduce by 25%. And typically you'll see that we divide that so you can see what true operations versus the subsidy are. Their subsidy this year is $750,000 versus what was going to be $1 million. And so you can see that 342,000 revenues came in over last year was 212, and they even exceeded 2019. And what I will say is reviewing the financials and those kind of campgrounds way up, and the sports program, as you just heard, is also quite an increase from the previous years. And if you look at the expenditures, 507 this year versus last year at 454. So the expenditures increase at 53,000. One thing I do want to note is keep in mind when you look at the expenditure increase, we did have the 3% merit increase in there for the staff and some insurance and those kind of things. That'll be operational increases that you want to account for. So in all of these funds, the expenditures did not increase very much. So what that shows to us is that the departments have done a really good job of watching their expenditures through this year of really rough year of the pandemic. And then here is a look at your water and sewer. Net of depreciation, and this shows your operational piece for water and sewer. Again, this is the first quarter. Your revenues are $286,000 more than 2020, and your expenditures are $72,000 less than 2020. Your consumption is up for your first quarter as well, so that is a good sign, because we couldn't say that very much of last year, so that's a really good sign. And I started putting this in because we had a lot of questions about debt, and this picture won't change until the first part of December or January of this next year because of the way our debt payments are. But here's a look at your 10 years from 2011 down to 2020 and how our debt has decreased, excuse me. And then that is it. I know I went through that very quickly, but most of you, that was repetition for you, so I didn't want to waste your time. But I will take any and all questions if you have them.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions from the audience? Marshall?
All right, Marshall Howden, 106 Rose O'Neill. So I think, Jamie, number one, kind of the elephant in the room is COVID, you know? And so as we're looking through this and figuring out, okay, which quarter is going to be most indicative of how we did this year versus last year? But like with what Larry pointed out, it's only really, you know, November, December, January. So really even next quarter, it's only February, March, April, right? So even then, the pandemic really didn't hit in full force until, you know, kind of late March. So would you say maybe the best barometer for how we did kind of year in, year out based on last year for COVID might be a combination of second and third quarter?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And yeah, I would tend to agree with you because if you're looking at just activity, for activity purposes, you can even look at the end of June, which is our mid-year, and you go back 2 months, which is April activity. So you're kind of just starting in that. And so what we've done to counteract that is in July, at the end of July, we're gonna go back and do a relook at all of our finances to see how it did, similar to what we did last year for COVID, when we kind of said, hey, here's the issues, and we've kind of got to put brakes on these kind of things. So yeah, we're gonna do that, but it's a really good question, and I hope I answered that well.
One more.
Yeah.
So obviously the kind of the debt has been an issue in our community that's been talked about, but it does seem to be going on the right trend line, right? What would you say the reasons for that have been, the decrease in the debt?
Well, it's a good question. The decrease in the debt is we've done several refinances over the last, say, 10 years, which helped the debt significantly. We've paid off several bond issues. I wish I knew that number, but I can certainly get you that number. We've paid off several bond issues since then. I will tell you, even just as recently as 2019, we paid off a bond issue. So we're working heavily. We look at that all the time to try to figure out, is refinance, is that the best way to do it? Is it going to save us money? Is it going to shave time off of the bonds, and how can we do that? So we diligently watch that, and we also have our trustees on the other side looking at that, and they'll call me up and say, hey, I noticed that one of these bonds is callable. What are your thoughts on refinancing and those kind of things? So we have a partnership there that they watch it, and so do we, to try to make sure that that debt is continually declining. Does that answer? Okay, you're welcome.
And Jamie, I want to follow up on that. That was a good point, that as these next few months come up, we're going to be comparing it to our shutdown. So would you mind in the next, maybe through the rest of this year, would you mind adding a year-to-date, how we're comparing with 2019? Because when we start comparing 21 to 20, after the shutdown in 20, the numbers are going to be just off the chart. But I think for mentally, if we could see how we're comparing to, because 19 was a record year.
So we do go back to 2019. We have 2019, 2020, and 2021. And we do that on our financials as well. We give 2 years going back prior. If you would like to see additional, like 2018 data, but we do try to put 2019 out there, and even on the financials, it's 2021 actual, 2020, and 2019. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I guess I just saw a chart or so that was just comparing.
Mr. Mayor?
What? Yes.
If I could. The other thing that, and Marshall was close to it, but the other thing that, and Jamie knows this quite well, 2020, the first quarter was going to be better than 2019.
Yes.
So comparing where we were with 2021 to that is it's even more skewed because of COVID. Because we felt 2020 was going to be a record year.
Yes.
Until we got hit with COVID.
Yeah. Thank you, Stan. Anybody else in the audience have any questions? Any members of the board?
Mayor,
Yes.
this is a slide I wanted to see there. So when we reclassed police salaries in September of 2019, did we do the fire salaries prior to that?
So this reclassing on this slide, it talks about when we moved the 2 inspectors from planning down to police, we moved the funds out of the general fund to police as well, so that we could make sure and account for the move of those employees. So the reclassing of the restructure of the employees as far as salaries and stuff goes is separate from what I'm talking about here. Was that your question?
Yeah, so we're just talking about 2 positions then?
It was 2 positions from planning, and they were the inspector positions, and we moved them down to police for code enforcement, and we wanted to make sure and move the salaries out of the general fund that they were originally designed for and move them down with the police as well. So you'll see that every slide, and even on the financials, we put it out there so that you can see that even though we moved the people out of one fund into another, we also moved the salaries to account for that.
Gotcha. So that tags right on to where it says 40K and change for
Yes.
code enforcement.
Yes.
So code enforcement does come under the purview of the police department.
Yes, it does now, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, let me ask you this then.
Sure.
Who was it under before?
It was under the planning department, which
Of
was under the
P&Z.
general fund.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Jamie, we
Yes, sir.
appreciate you. Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Looking forward to a good year. Won't be long, we'll be asking you for projections.
Coming soon.
Madam Clerk?
Your Honor, the next item is the first reading bill number 6012, an ordinance approving the contract with Connell Insurance Incorporated for brokerage services for property liability, workers' compensation, cyber liability insurance coverages, and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading bill number 6012.
Wow. You guys are getting good. We have a motion second. We'll now have a staff report from Mr. Jan Fisher.
Mayor, excuse me, Mayor, members of the board, bringing to you tonight an agreement with Connell Insurance, they're our current broker, but we did an RFQ back in late March, early April, and they were the successful winners of that RFQ. We had two applicants that submitted applications for the RFQ, Allis Acres and Arney and Connell Insurance. Allis Acres and Arney withdrew at the last minute simply because they could not write insurance under Tokyo Marine, HCC. And Tokyo Marine, HCC is who we renewed our insurance with just a few weeks ago. We've got a 3-year rate lock with them, and that's going to be an important ongoing factor for us to have a broker that can write with Tokyo Marine. Anyhow, we recommend approval of this bill, and I'll answer any questions you got.
Anyone in the audience have any questions? Any members of the board? Jen, I know several of us were involved with those HR committee meetings discussing this, and I just want to take a minute and thank you for your professionalism and the information you brought to the table to help us understand why we're making this decision.
Well, with this, Tokyo Marine HCC has been a good partner for us. We replaced Gallagher with Tokyo Marine, and Tokyo Marine has been lights out better. And Connell Insurance has been the one who's provided that for us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Madam Clerk?
Ready for a vote? It passes 6-0. Thank you. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading bill number 6013, an ordinance amending Chapter 86 Traffic and Vehicles of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to overnight parking of recreational vehicles at theaters. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading bill number 6013.
You guys are good. We have a motion and a second. We'll have staff report from Joel Hornicle.
Mayor, members of the board, good evening. We're here tonight to provide a much simplified approach to this topic. Let's just say that. A lot of history. I'm not going to go through it again tonight, but we definitely heard your all's wishes loud and clear during the last meeting. Attorney Liebeck did a little bit of cleanup in addition to what we were trying to achieve, which was simply remove the barrier in the community to allow recreational vehicles to be parked on theater properties. We believe we've done that with the proposed code language, and by all means recommend approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any members in the audience wishing to comment? Members of the board? Hearing none?
Can you go through just real quick? Huh? Sorry.
Really?
So just in layman's terms, what you amended is no restrictions?
Yes.
Okay. You go ahead.
Okay. So the previous recommendation that we brought included revisions to both chapters 86 and 94. What we've done at this point is removed all those recommendations for chapter 94, and we're only bringing a recommendation for chapter 86, which is largely our police department's chapter. They enforce those rules and regulations, and they cover a lot of different things with vehicles. Up to this point, there's been a barrier in that code which only allows recreational vehicles in business parking lots when that business is open and operating. And it's specifically stated when the business was not, that you could not park recreational vehicles. And so what we have done is we've added an additional regulation to Section 86-353 of the Branson Municipal Code, and it simply states it shall not be a violation of this section for a performer, entertainer, or act performing at a theater to park their recreational motor vehicle or vehicles overnight on the property of the theater they are performing. So again, we used a little bit of that research and work that it's targeted to performers or acts at theaters, so theaters can't become campgrounds, but very much address the need that theaters have to allow their acts to stay on their property.
Fair enough. And what about the fees?
Because this is limited to a code change in 86, there's no fees. It becomes a right of every theater property in the community.
Okay. Amen.
Don't get used to getting everything you ask for, because it won't last long. We ready to vote?
Thank you, Joel.
Clay
pleasure.
Cooper's RV Park coming up.
Clay's gonna have 50 members playing in his theater. Parking lot
I'm
will be
already
full.
booked through September.
The vote is 6-0, it passes.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the next item is appointments. At the May 11th, 2021 Board of Aldermen regular meeting, the board voted to fill 3 positions on the Human Resources Committee. One of the 3 positions was filled at that meeting, and applications were reopened in order to fill the remaining 2 positions. The mayor and board will be voting on the following applicants, and 2 applicants receiving the most votes will be appointed to the Human Resources Committee with terms expiring April 2022. The floor is open for a motion to vote by ballot on the following applicants for the Human Resources Committee: Melissa Sill, Kevin McConnell, and Arlie Appler.
Nothing's coming.
So we're needing a motion and a second.
Have we been authorized to make that? Okay.
If you will, my system's.
I think, do we need to hand out the ballots?
Can I have a motion verbally? I'm sorry, in a
So
second.
move. Second.
Thank you.
It's so much easier doing it that way.
Say again?
So moving, yeah.
The mayor and board will now be voting by ballot, and the city clerk will read the results.
The votes are as follows: Ruth Denham, Kevin McConnell, and Arlie Appler. Alderman Skanes, Melissa Sill, and Arlie Appler. Mayor Melton, Kevin McConnell, and Arlie Appler. Alderman Cooper, Kevin McConnell, Arlie Appler. Alderman Fenton, Melissa Sill, Arlie Appler. Alderman Whitus, Melissa Sill, Arlie Appler. We have 6 votes for Arlie Appler, 3 votes for Kevin McConnell, and 3 votes for, no, boy, sorry. Boy, thank you for catching that. And Alderman C, Melissa Sill, and Arlie Appler. So sorry. Thank you for catching me. So that gives us 7 votes for Arlie Appler, 3 votes for Kevin McConnell, and 4 votes for Melissa Sill. So Arlie Appler and Melissa Sill will serve on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody who is willing, for your willingness to serve. It's greatly appreciated. We'll now move on to reports. Alderman Denham?
I attended the celebration over at Elevate Branson with many others who attended. We got a tour of the building and got to go see their education opportunities that they offer for both adults and children. And the most fun part, I believe, was meeting their therapy dog, Theo. He's a beautiful, beautiful dog, and I'm sure that he's a comfort to a lot of people there. I have a concern. I read the Taney County Health Department post by Lisa Marshall regarding an uptake in COVID, but in the report, there were no statistics. There were no numbers. Nothing was mentioned, and I just feel it's kind of dangerous to put out information like that without supporting documentation. I feel it can create a fear, and it was based on no facts. So I will be contacting the Taney County Health Department to get a little bit more information on that. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Alderman Gaines?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have any report today at all. Thank you, sir.
For the record, Alderman Gaines does not have a report.
Except for the Razorbacks will win.
Alderman Cooper?
Well, I was going to talk about the ballparks of America, but I did that. I had a citizen that lives in my ward call today concerned about the park in our neighborhood, and I can't remember the name of that park down there. What is it? Murphy. And she said that she takes her kids there a lot, and I told her that I'd bring it up tonight. Takes her kids there a lot. She's found needles numerous times. She's called and had the police come get them, and this and this and that. Today she was down there with her kids, and there were some questionable characters there that were, she didn't know what it was, but they were smoking something and this and that. She called the cops, and she was concerned because she said the police didn't get there for an hour, and and I explained to her that the parks are important to us. I mean, you and I, when we were walking the streets and campaigning, we talked about that park over there, Cantrell or whatever that is. But she said, well, I really thought when you guys got in office that you would make that. I said, well, give us time. We've only, things move slowly. But and she was concerned about, well, it took the police so long to get here and this and that. And I said, well, we're understaffed. There's only so many police officers that can hop up and get there. I'm sure they got there as soon as they can to address the matter. And I told her that I would bring it up tonight, that we are aware of the park situation, and we're really focused on making the parks safer, better, cleaner, new basketball hoops, whatever we can because that is important to our community and giving our kids a place to go and do something that will keep them out of trouble. And again, Marshall and I live right there at that park, and it is, there's always graffiti. Somebody comes down and paints over it. I'm not sure who does that. Is it a city?
Yeah, we actually do. But could you do me a favor, please? After the meeting, meet with Jeff, and if he could get that lady's name, we'll connect them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, but they do a good job clean. They come down and paint over all the graffiti, and then a few weeks later, there's more graffiti. And I have a 12-year-old and a 17-year-old, and I worry myself about letting them go. They want to go shoot hoops. I'm like, let me go with you. It is a shame. So I just want to let her know that we are talking about that, and that it is on the forefront of addressing that situation with the park. So I just thought I told her I would mention that. So that's my report.
Alderman Fenton?
All right, well, thank you to everybody that came out and spoke tonight and for all the presentations and information. Thank you, Clay, for not stealing my thunder. The final town hall meeting on the, on the animal ordinance is tomorrow night. So I'm gonna steal Jeff's. So that'll be, Jeff and I will be there, invite everybody out, 6 o'clock at the senior center. What's the address down there? You know, Compton Drive, there you go. So 6 o'clock tomorrow night, this will be the last of these town hall meetings, so we'd love to have everybody come out, share their thoughts, get some information. I know, I think Chief Matthews will be there, like he's been at all the other ones, with some good information, so looking forward to that. The other thing, yesterday, Alderman Cooper and I actually had an opportunity to attend a meeting over at the chamber office. It was a very informative meeting. We got some updates on the 76, I'm probably going to botch all this, but the 76 CID. A lot of good information that was shared with us, and so I don't know who I'm asking or making this request of, but I'm going to make this request that whether it be staff or somebody that's part of that CID, I would love for, just like we had the presentations tonight, I would love to have a presentation on that at one of our upcoming meetings, kind of share, where we're at on things, what the financial situation looks like, what some of the next steps. I know there's some talk about undergrounding utilities and things like that, and so I think we all are aware of the 76 project that happened a few years ago, and I think there's some really positive things that are happening with that were shared with us yesterday. And I would love for the folks that are, that sit on this board, the people that attend and anybody that watches, to get that information and hear that update and hear these positive things that are happening with that CID and what we're looking to do, or what will be happening going forward. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Consider it done.
Alderman Whitus?
I just have a couple things, and this probably is something that staff can help with. I've had some residents concerned, and really it's nothing that we can control because we have the Highway 65 ramp controlled by MoDOT. Is that still going to be closed July 4th like it was Memorial Weekend? And then at the other end of town, our city limit sign is on the dam, and the dam is shut down to one lane also over Memorial Weekend. Is that also going to continue through July 4th? That's all I got.
Alderman Say? Administrator Dobbins?
Thank you very much for the vacation time. I greatly appreciated it. I am fully refreshed, and that is my entire report, because Bill Skane said nothing, and he's thrown my game off.
Serves you right.
I don't know who approved that time off request.
Gina. I'll make mine brief. At the last Alderman meeting, I addressed the mayor ambassadors that I appointed. I mistakenly used the word committee, and I caused a little bit of a stir, so I wanted to take a minute and clarify what my intentions are. I did appoint 3 ambassadors, and I've asked those ambassadors to gather data on those topics that I've assigned them to bring the mayor's office some information, some suggestions on the topics that are important to me that I wanted to address, which includes the homeless, the extended stay, and the panhandling. It includes the music and theater industry, and it includes the public safety. So, these ambassadors that I've appointed, are you laughing at me or with me? So the ambassadors that I've appointed, they do not have mayoral powers. They cannot speak for the mayor. They cannot give direction. They are simply an information gathering resource to help our city become a better place. There is limited time. I have an ambitious agenda that I like to accomplish. I won't be able to accomplish it by myself without asking for citizens' input and help. So that is end of my report. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Did you get those, Lisa?
Clay got in there. Yes, he did.
Oh, here you go. Let's vote. Come on, vote.
Is that a yes? Let me,
29 yeses.
motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
For the record, 8:25.
We'll work on that.
Work on it. Usually out here for another